There's not much point to a 400 horsepower, 2,400 pound pocket rocket if we can't control it. So with our highly bespoke pedal assembly being nearly complete, today, let's finish it off for good. This is our loud pedal, and there's a problem with it. Yeah, the drive-by cable throttle slightly needs a cable to work. Like this one. Magic. That's the easiest trick for today though, as to fit this thing, we're gonna need some brackets on both ends. And while the engine side should be pretty straightforward, the pedal connection is going to require some contemplation. You see, some idiot put a power steering motor and a massive brake system in our way. So sneaking a linkage through here will be about as fun as a root canal. I mean, it's not actually surprising to us, but as space is so limited, it does beg the question. Why not use drive-by wire? Well, as mentioned in our How It Works video, drive-by cable is significantly cheaper, and we've been able to put the difference in price towards other parts. So that's why. But seeing as the throttle isn't the last item to live up here, we'd be smart to ask ourselves another question. What else should be integrated with this proposed bracket? Well, keeping in mind that most of the OG firewall was cut out, what we really need is something that will strengthen the lower windscreen area, also called the scuttle panel, by tying it into our new tubular structure. Furthermore, it'd be great if this design could incorporate a forward-facing gusset to reinforce our future firewall, which will live somewhere around here. We also still need to incorporate a connection point for the throttle, as that is of course what got us started down this track. And lastly, if it's not too much to ask, a mounting point for the left side of the AC core would be lovely. Plus maybe one other thing we'll talk about later. So, if you lost count, that's five separate features we need to keep in mind. Let's see what we can do. It may be unclear still just how this is going to tackle all our demands, but trust the process. So far, it's fitting in here nicely, and we've been able to maintain clearance to all the other components for service. So it should work well, but I don't know. It's just a bit utilitarian, don't you think? I mean, squared corners? So 2019.
Good.
Much better, but I'd really love to roll over the edges of those speed holes to make this look more like a stamped part. So equipped with a piece of bar stock that has a small slit in the end, we can slowly work our way around the edge to put a nice little bend in there. I would show you the process, but I kind of forgot to set up the time-lapse camera. Anyway, this wasn't hard. It just took a while and involved some sanding and wire wheeling to eventually look like this. Kind of factory-ish, which was the idea. And as some added benefits, these holes will have saved weight and added strength while giving us some pass-throughs, which may be helpful later. As for that latest cardboard template though, it represents a bell crank to turn the throttle pedal's downward motion into a lateral one. Reason being, there is no convenient way of aiming a cable directly at the pedal, but even if there was, it would require a huge bend that will cause wear over time. So instead, my plan is to connect the pedal through a linkage to this bell crank and let it pull on the cable horizontally. Thankfully, this will also let us correct the pedal ratio, as we need a 1-to-1 configuration, but the current pedal is a 3-to-1. This was necessary for clearance reasons, and the solution will be to give this little bell crank a 1-to-3 ratio so everything cancels out and works how we intended. It really wasn't necessary to use bearings here, but as I was fresh out of bronze bushings, this was just something different to try. I'm quite happy with it though. And by the way, the corner there was purposely not rounded, because as it sits, it lets us do this. Literally couldn't have it fit any tighter than that. Oh, and if you hit subscribe now, that would also be very fitting. As for fitting the cable though, we need another bracket for our bracket. So let's get back to work. It's just getting loosely screwed into place for now, but you can still get the idea that we've kept things tight to the underside of the firewall, which is scheduled for more removal, FYI. And the clearance to the steering motor looks to be about a finger's width. Perfect. In fact, just because we can, we've also quickly mocked up a connection to see how evenly the cable will move with the pedal, and thankfully, the results speak for themselves. Now that we've got this much completed, I want to point out that we specifically routed the cable over to the passenger side. So eventually, it will just pop out the firewall, travel up the fuel rail to the throttle body, and keep everything nice and tidy. Speaking of which though, we need another bracket. And for once, we could have just bought one, but where's the fun in that?
Good.
It'd be a lot nicer if this was bolted down.
Mm-hmm.
What we've ended up with has some flaws, so we'll consider it a test piece and correct the issues in version 2. However, it's raised a separate issue. Upon testing the cable in this bracket, it's clear that the throttle body's return spring is very strong, as it's making the cable's motion rougher than I'd like. Probably because this is just a cheap knockoff, but it could also be that the return spring is simply too strong. So for now, let's try to ease off the tension and see where that gets us. The throttle body thankfully comes apart with just a few screws here and there, after which the shaft can be carefully unwound to prevent it from slapping me in the face. Turns out there are actually 2 springs in here, for good reason. If you're going wide open throttle and one were to break, the other is still there to help shut the throttle again. Taking one out, like we're doing now, removes this failsafe, but it is just for testing. One way or another, we'll put it back in and address the cable to get things working smoothly. But for now, we can keep moving and build the real deal. Awesome, things seem to be working really well as it sits, so let's return to installing the main bracket and get everything finished up.
Depressing the pedal, pulling the cable, which is that is open, full throttle,
and that is idle. I don't like how much it's in line right now, and then it's on this downward angle here, but that's due to the shape of this, where this is actually this offset longer this way than it is this way. And that makes it so that the first little bit of pedal travel does less over here. So that's nice. For driving around town, it should make it easier to drive the car. That's moving the pedal about an inch, and that's the other inch. It's cool, it's just it might wear over time. So that gets all this sorted. Finally, after way more work than anticipated, we now have our full allotment of pedals. And they're even heel and towable, if that's a word. We really appreciate you all sticking around through this job, and as a result, now you know a bit more about the madness we've created. Clearances are very tight, but they're clearances nonetheless, and we've even had every component removed since this was finished, so I can say with confidence that accessibility is possible. So with the left side of the AC now fixed in place, let's push on a bit further and address the other two mounts. Great. With those finished up, we could end here, but there's one more thing we need to do. So there you have it. Things are starting to tie together now, and we can finally cross the pedal assembly, AC box mounts, and dashbar to tunnel brackets off our list. Woo-hoo. I've mentioned before that keeping things tacked for now allows us to adjust them later if need be, and that's a good thing, as I forgot to weld the captive nuts in place. Oops, guess we'll fix that later. But speaking of captive nuts, I wonder what those are for. Thanks for watching, and a very special thanks to the faithful patrons, donators, and subscribers who tangibly support our shenanigans. If you're interested in helping out as well, there are links below. Until next time, keep building, and we'll catch you later.